I mean, the real fascinating crypto is Bitcoin. To me, I mean, that's the one that I think has the most likely possibility of becoming a universal viable currency. And it's, it's limited in the amount that there can be. It's, people mine it with their own computer. It's like that to me is very fascinating. And I love the fact that it's been implemented and that at least some, like I've had Andreas Antonopoulos on the podcast, and when he talks about it, he's living it. He's spending all of his money. Everything he gets paid is in Bitcoin. He pays his rent in Bitcoin. Everything he does is in Bitcoin.
Here's a quick excerpt from Joe Rogan talking about how Bitcoin is changing the world, how people are starting to actually utilize Bitcoin in day-to-day transactions. If you're on the Bitcoin train, if you haven't learned yet, we suggest you tune in. It's what the Bitcoin Bros are here for, to educate you and keep you informed of what's happening, why Bitcoin is important in the world, and what the latest updates is in the crypto space. With that, what's happening, crypto crew? Sean's coming back at you, another cryptocurrency video. Getting straight to it, we took a look at this chart yesterday, and we took a look at these two previous peaks in the previous cycle. This is in 2021, $65,000 peak and the $69,000 peak. Why do we have this pullback? We talked about that with Elon Musk, and he basically said this May 16th. Well, look what happened after he basically pulled back from accepting Bitcoin for Tesla purchases. The price shot down, but then we had a bounce up, and then we got, the price got suppressed here, the price got suppressed here, and then once we hit the $69,000 peak, what caused it? The Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, they were talking about signals a shift, that they were going to signal a shift away from pandemic support, meaning that they were going to stop printing money and they're going to start quantitative tightening versus easing. This is why we've seen this McDonald's M, then we fell off a cliff, and right now we've been basing out. So keep that in mind. First update coming from Stock Money Lizards. You don't know what's happening with the crypto space, but there is a common pattern to find the 100x pattern. Solana was in 2021, Link in 2022, Doge in 21, BNB in 2018. They all are in this symmetrical triangle pattern, and they have this peak, come down, retest, get squeezed, then a blast off. Look at, they're all relatively the same. What's that next 100x gem? Don't miss out. Look at the update from TechDev. What Bitcoin has looked like before heading north. You see that every time it comes down with this weighted log Bollinger Band, it comes down to this around 2 level, and then passes up over this red level here within this Bollinger Band, and then goes off to the races. Every single time, touches this, off to the races, touches this, off to the races, touches this, and look at, we're just getting back above this red line, off to the races. So if you look where we were at last time we were here, we touched it, price was around 10,000. Then we went up 7x from there. Before then, the price was around, if we zoom into the time before that, this was in 2016, the price was relatively around $500, and from there we went up to $20,000. So you're talking about a 40x, talking about a 7x, and then we're talking about what are we going to do right now around 27,000. How many x's are we going to see before Bitcoin has that ultimate blow off top, and how long will it take? Pack your bags. And here's Bitcoin's parabolic curve right here. Bitcoin has formed 3 subsequent bases since Q4 of 2022. Right here, base 1, blast off, base 2, blast off, base 1 through 3, first impulse 5, and correction, base 3, ABC correction or blow off. Once base 3 is final, an impulsive bust to the 60K region is to be expected. Wave 3/5. Base 4, wave 4, second correction, ABC sharp, and wave 5. So you see here, base 3, we could have that blast off to the previous high before we have that ABC correction, and then this ultimate blast off, sell off top. Could we see this by the end of 2024? We could see something that is definitely in the realm of possibility. Bitcoin shooting up to almost $200,000 or over it. Pack your bags once again. Stock Money Lizards is showing you the same thing. These bases, you have the blow off tops, bear markets, base level, blast off. Bear market, base out again, then a blast off. Are we going to see $100,000 coming soon? And with that, we have an update from Greg Foss and also James Lavis and a few others, and they're talking about the debt cycle and how you can prepare for it. Let's hear what they have to say.
So what is a debt spiral? Well, Greg and I talked about this about a year ago, and he encouraged me to write an article about it to let people know exactly what the position is of the United States government and many of the sovereigns around the world. But basically, the debt spiral, if you were looking at the United States Treasury and you considered it, if you were looking at it like a company on the New York Stock Exchange, we would call it a zombie company. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it means that the company isn't covering its interest expense with its earnings. Okay, so if you look at the United States Treasury and we look at all of their expenses, you have mandatory expenses like the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and then those are signed into legislation. They have no choice. They've got to pay these expenses, right? Then you've got big expenses that are signed into long-term contracts like the defense spending. When you add those up and you add interest expenses on the debt, they total more than the United States Treasury takes in earnings, which is really just tax dollars every year. So that creates a deficit. And in the United States, we've been operating in a perpetual deficit for a very long time. And so that deficit leads to us having to borrow more to cover the deficit, which is issuing bonds. And then you have to pay interest on those bonds. And then you have to, that interest that you're paying now creates a larger deficit. And as that deficit grows, it creates a larger interest expense, which creates what? A larger deficit. And eventually it creates the demand for treasuries to fall, which means that you're going to have to pay more interest on that. And as interest rates are rising, you're paying even more interest on the debt that you're issuing, which creates what? A larger deficit. And this is called the
debt spiral. So eloquently put, James, people would argue, well, don't worry. The economy is growing just as fast as the debt is. That's false. Total debt to GDP is a very important metric because total debt gets paid by tax revenue on GDP, right? So you have a numerator, total debt, you have your denominator, GDP. The fact of the matter is that your total debt is growing faster than your sales growth or GDP.